Have you found yourself having strange dreams, inexplicable experiences while you're sleeping, or just curious if your dreams may have deeper meaning to them? In this video, we will explore the dream realm in an attempt to demystify common dream and sleep experiences and provide clarity on what your dreams actually mean, likely that they are far more than just random slideshows to view while our bodies rest. Given how much time we spend asleep, which for most of us, it is estimated that we spend nearly a third of our life sleeping. And much of that time is, in fact, spent dreaming. Possibly half of the time we're asleep, we are spent dreaming. So in theory, it could be we're spending up to 30 years of our life sleeping. That could be 15 years of our life dreaming. It could be worth considering what's actually happening while we're doing something that is taking up such an outsized portion of our life. All creatures, generally, from my understanding, engage in the practice of sleep, which we would assume is for rest and recovery purposes. But why do we dream? Why not just be fully tranquilized and essentially fade to black when we go to sleep and then wake back up? Many animals even dream. So it is apparent that this is a somewhat prevalent and common biological process. It has to have some form of benefit, given the fact that we are not the only creatures that engage in the dream practice. So there are general notions for why we engage in dreaming, in that dreams are primarily possibly for memory consolidation, emotional processing, and perhaps neurological maintenance. Basically just keep things running properly in our minds. But again, thinking a little bit deeper, we literally enter a completely different realm of consciousness for nearly a third of our life. Much of that in a very mysterious dream realm. Many indigenous cultures refer to the dream world as the real world and the waking world as the dream world. Why do they prescribe to that notion? Could they be touching on characteristics of the dream realm that many of us are not conscious of? So now it may be worthwhile to ask, what is this dream realm? What is this dream realm? What is the realm that we go to almost every night when we sleep and spend years of our life in? What are the characteristics of the dream realm? I'm sure you've noticed that there are some interesting characteristics of this realm that we spend years of our life in, that they don't match the same characteristics and qualities of reality of our waking consciousness. For example, some common patterns and characteristics of the dream realm is the fact that there is no time. Time does not exist in that realm, which becomes pretty evident in the fact that when we are dreaming, it is very often that there is no beginning to the dream. And oftentimes there's no end to the dream either. And it shows up in the fact that we can oftentimes experience instantaneous travel. All of a sudden you're one place in a dream and then next thing you know, you're somewhere else. And there's also the common experience of dreams blending together. You don't know if you're still in the same dream or have you started a new one. It's pretty mysterious in the way that time works in the dream realm. There's also a very common pattern of having the capacity to reveal one's own memories. Perhaps dreaming about things that you haven't thought about in decades. You might dream about places, experiences, people that you literally completely forgot even existed. So it's showing that our dreams are almost acting like a very vast memory repository. Now, what's happening? Where are you when you are dreaming where there's no time? This is your consciousness consciously experiencing the fourth dimension, also known as the astral plane. Our waking consciousness, where we spend our waking lives, where you are watching this video from, is experienced in the third dimension. The third dimension could be categorized as physical reality, this very physical plane, whereas when we dream, we're in the astral plane. There are different layers of the astral plane, but essentially dreaming is literally experiencing another dimension of reality. And what exists there in the fourth dimension? Generally speaking, the only things that exist in the fourth dimensional astral planes are non-physical things. Things like thought forms. They could be your own thoughts, thoughts from the collective. Generally, your thoughts are energy. Everything is energy. And your thoughts exist in a non-physical plane because they are not tangible. They are not physical. There's also things like psychic debris, just psychic discharge that is floating around in the collective field from an individual's mind or the collective mind. There are also things like non-physical entities, things like shadow aspects of self. Even things like soul fragments can float around in this non-physical astral plane. Things like timeline potentials also exist in the fourth dimensional astral plane. This is where it is possible to see possible futures, future outcomes, things like prophetic dreams, stem from being able to tap into the astral plane. This is likely why indigenous cultures say the dream realm is the real world, because it is the realm where the energetic potentials of reality organize themselves before manifesting into our so-called waking life. Essentially, what happens is the higher dimensions are the leading indicators or the initiator of experiences in the lower dimensions. They essentially dictate what happens in the lower dimensions. So we are heavily influenced by the astral plane, even if we are not aware of it. So it might make sense to pay attention as to what goes on there. Now, again, why do we go there sometimes and consciously at night? Why do we dream? Why do we go to this realm? Again, for things likely to do with the most assumed experiences, things like healing, processing, restoration, to disengage our waking mental defenses, to allow for other supportive processes to take place, and likely also to connect with this other realm for what may be waiting for us there. Now, where do these dreams come from? Do they just happen randomly as a result of showing up in the astral plane, like we're just moving along in some kind of fourth dimension theme park ride? Now, some dreams generally do appear to just clearly be coming from our own subconscious as a way of a form of processing. But once I delve into some of the other common dream experiences, it will become clear that there's just too much depth and complexity for these experiences to solely be housed in our own mind. Our minds are simply incapable of housing all that takes on in the dream realm. We do have what we could classify as divine or non-physical guidance that supports us in the dream realm. Your own soul, or what you might call your higher self, can make direct contact with you while you're dreaming. Things like angelic presences or other beings that you might call spirit guides exist in these other planes, and they do oftentimes dedicate themselves to support you in these types of manners. And it is also possible to brush up against other energies in the astral plane that may materialize as a dream. So now that we have an overview of what the dream plane is, I will now share some of the most common types of dreams and dream experiences, and perhaps what they might be indicating if you are having one of these experiences. First, I will start by addressing, maybe you might be wondering, I don't even dream at all, so I don't know what you're talking about because I don't have dreams. Maybe that's a common experience that you're having for long stretches of time, or maybe for most of your life you feel like, I know other people have dreams, or maybe I've had times in my life where I've had dreams, but I don't think I'm even dreaming. Maybe it's not even that you don't even remember your dreams when you wake up. You might have some people might have the experience. They know they were dreaming the night prior, but they just forgot all of them when they woke up. Some people might literally not even have that experience. They might literally experience what I was mentioning at the beginning, a feeling like they're just fading to black and then waking back up. They don't actually know if they're even dreaming. This is not unheard of. There are a variety of potential explanations for this. For example, it could be due to substance intake. It is very common for those who regularly partake in the use of cannabis to have their dreams go away. And many people notice after the fact, once they stop regularly using cannabis, that their dreams return. So it is possible that there are some substances that dampen the dream pathways. So maybe you're not engaging in cannabis, but there could be perhaps maybe pharmaceuticals that could dampen those pathways as well. This is just speculation on my part, that there are potential things that could be blocking your ability to experience REM sleep, which is the part of sleep, typically in the second half of sleep, that your dreams are most likely to happen, or perhaps blocking your dream pathways. Also, perhaps there could be severe calcification or blockage in your pineal gland, which is a gland in your brain which is associated with sleep and melatonin production and with the sleep and dream experience. There could be some form of severe blockage there, or blockage with your third eye energy center, which is correlated with your pineal gland in your brain, which is associated with extrasensory vision and vision in these types of realms. So there could be something that is directly heavily blocking that pathway. And or there could be some kind of subconscious awareness in your subconscious that is aware that if you remembered your dreams at night, it could overload your psyche in your waking state. So perhaps that might feel like you're getting a blank slate in the morning. You may be having dreams, but you might just have the feeling like nothing's really happening. And it's also possible that people do go through different phases of life. They might not be having dreams every night. it might be appropriate to get a break from having dream experiences. So it's okay if your dreams even take on different textures at times, or if you're having a lot of dreams during a certain period and then not so many during other periods. But generally speaking, from my perspective, it seems like having no dreams at all for long periods of time probably isn't the healthiest state to be in, or it could be just a sign that one just isn't ready to metabolize what more thorough dream experiences have to offer, this is showing that there likely isn't an opportunity for anything to reach you, to reach your waking mind for deeper illumination and processing. Next, we have the dreams that you forget. This is probably the vast majority of your dreams, the most common dream experiences. Oftentimes, we are aware that we were spending quite a bit of time dreaming the night prior, but then we wake up, either immediately upon waking, they just completely disappear. We felt like we could grasp them, and then they just completely slip out of our hands, or maybe after a few minutes, a couple hours, they just completely disappear. These could and are very likely meant just for general processing. So if you remember your dream, it's very likely because you were meant to remember it, or there's at least an opportunity for something to be learned if you give it your attention. Sometimes we're forgetting these dreams because we're not actually giving them any attention. If we actually devoted some attention, they might stick around a bit. But if you're finding that you're essentially never remembering your dreams and you want to, you can put your intention towards remembering your dreams. You can signal to yourself that I want to remember my dreams. I'm willing to receive more from the dream realm. This can signal to yourself, to your subconscious, to the universe at large, that you are open to receiving more information in your dream space. So you can partake in things like keeping a dream journal, putting a note in your phone. So immediately upon waking, you can just jot down what you recall from your dreams, or just taking a voice note perhaps. And on top of that, taking some time to reflect on what you might be thinking about these dreams that are being given to you. What do you think they might mean? Even if it's just stream of consciousness. Taking the time to actually direct energy to them will create a self-reinforcing loop that you're then showing to yourself, to the universe, that this person's doing something with these dreams. So let's give them some more. So also, just doing these practices might make you realize that you've had the capacity to remember your dreams all along. You just perhaps never took the time, and they may have just faded away by breakfast. So now, moving on into the dreams that you might actually remember, or the dreams that seem to carry quite a bit of substance. Probably the most common and most obvious type of dream in this area would be likely things that would fall, again, into more simple life processing about things that are directly happening in your life. Common examples of dreams that people have are things like missing a flight that you might have upcoming, or maybe failing a test that is coming up soon, or giving a poor presentation at work, so on and so forth. Those should be pretty self-evident as to what you are processing. Those could be the equivalent of perhaps during your waking life, you just didn't have the bandwidth or the time and the spaciousness to fully process what was going on an emotional or mental level. So then it is kind of just tying the loop in your dream space by kind of completing that process and allowing you to process that. But then we now move on into the more robust dreams. This next category of dreams might be one of the more larger ones that we receive, and more meaningful types of dreams. These are what I would call symbolic or mythic or even narrative types of dreams. These are the types of dreams that would likely be more complex than the prior example that I just offered. They're likely going to be much more lengthy and perhaps have a full narrative structure. They may have what feels like a beginning, middle, and end. These are dreams that carry symbolic metaphors or are directly referencing the narrative arc of your life and perhaps the specific things that you are navigating in your life. There is a very large amount of material on this matter in the collective ethos, particularly shared from well-known psychoanalysts, from people like Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung. Many of their disciples have written at length about what they believe to be the mechanisms of what is happening in these dreams, and offering common perspectives or opinions on the symbology of our dreams. So it could be a meaningful avenue for one to explore their opinions, as there is a lot to explore in that area. But I will offer a brief overview from my perspective. Generally, what these dreams are doing is they are offering a symbolic reference of your life. They are generally not meant to be taken literally. And why is that? Again, this could have multiple layers. Again, we are coming from an area, a lot of this information, the energy is in this astral plane, which, as I mentioned, could be considered a precognitive plane, where it's just pure thought forms, timeline potentials and such. So it is almost precognitive. So that's why it could be not fully formed. But then again, the other layer to this is that humans in general are very much moved by story. They oftentimes hit us on a deeper level than actually experiencing or hearing something given to us in linear, real fashion. This is why things like movies and books, novels, fantasy stories hit us on such a deep level, because they are essentially distilling down the essence of something into a narrative arc that removes all the boring stuff that is part of our waking reality. So they're almost hyper real and they hit us at our core. So that is possibly why some of these dreams are coming to us in a narrative, symbolic manner. And the general characteristic of these dreams is that, again, they are not meant to be taken literally. So if you are dreaming about specific people, very oftentimes it might not be about that exact person. You may be dreaming about a public figure, and it may not be about that public figure, but perhaps the characteristics that that public figure may carry. You may be dreaming about animals, and it might not be about an animal. If you're dreaming about a lion, you're probably not engaging with lions in your waking life, but it may have something to do with you navigating something in your life in regard to the characteristics of that animal. You may be dreaming about your parents, and this is a case where it could be about directly your parents, or it could be about your ancestors, something in relation to your family dynamics and your family history and your lineage. Perhaps you're dreaming about old friends from childhood, people you haven't spoken to in years or are no longer in your life. These could potentially be a stand-in for a younger version of you, or the characteristics that you associate with that person that you remember about them. It is very common in the symbolic analysis of dreams to associate dreaming about another person who carries the same gender as you is likely to represent a part of you. Whereas if you're dreaming about someone of the opposite gender, this could be the equivalent of you dreaming about your inner masculine or feminine. If you are, generally speaking, a man and you're dreaming about a woman, it could be having to do with your inner feminine, and vice versa. If you are a woman and you're dreaming about a man appears in your dream, that man may reflect your inner masculine and your masculine energies. If you are dreaming about war or conflict, you're seeing a lot of conflict, violence, things that are very eruptive, this could be reflecting conflict within yourself, not necessarily that you are engaging in war in your daily life. If you are dreaming about romantic encounters or perhaps physical intimacy, these are less likely to be about fantasies, but generally could be about integrating or navigating dynamics with masculine and feminine energies, or dynamics with the opposite gender, or in the way that you relate with others. Perhaps indicating that you are perhaps orienting towards a union of some sort, or orienting, again, towards some type of relationship dynamic. Perhaps you may be dreaming about a car. This could be symbolizing the way you are navigating your life. Perhaps you are dreaming about being in school. This could be symbolizing a period of personal growth or something that you are actively engaged with learning. If you're dreaming about your home or a home, your home generally represents your subconscious, the full housing of your consciousness and the things that you're just generally navigating. Now here in the symbolic narrative dream, what is very important are the details. The details very much matter in these symbolic dreams. For example, did you lose the war versus did you stop fighting altogether? If you stop fighting, that is showing that perhaps you are withdrawing your energy from a type of conflict. Did you pet an animal versus did you run away from it? If you pet the animal, that might be showing that you are integrating that animal's characteristics, versus if you're running away from it, you might still be scared of that part of yourself. Did you enjoy the romantic intimacy versus were you repelled by it? Did you crash your car or was someone else driving it? Crashing your car might be indicating a potential warning. If you keep going in this direction, you might veer off course. Or maybe if someone else is driving, that could be symbolizing that someone else has too much control over the navigation and direction of your life. Did you graduate a school versus did you leave it altogether? If you graduated, that might show that you've reached the next level in a certain dynamic of your development, versus did you leave it altogether? You might be completely done with that arc. Again, these can be barometers of your life, showing various thresholds that you have achieved. For example, no longer tolerating certain behavior. Like if you were repelled by a certain romantic dynamic in a dream, that might be showing you a threshold that you are done with that dynamic. Could be a positive sign, even if it might have been a negative experience in the dream. Or perhaps showing that you have integrated an aspect of yourself. For example, you have come into union with the opposite gender. That could be you've come into union with a part of yourself. Or again, a type of experience with an animal that you might have had in a dream that you had a close bond with. That could show that you are integrating those characteristics within yourself. Perhaps also showing you that you are now orienting yourself towards meaningful pursuits. If you're having positive relations with others, it might be showing that you're making good strides and orienting yourself towards these happening in your life. Or again, perhaps they could be warnings of what might happen if you follow certain patterns. You may crash your car if you keep doing what you're doing. Not necessarily a predictive outcome, but a possible gentle warning. And as I've laid out here, some of these dreams are just so complex and mythic that there's no way that they just exist in your psyche. Very often, these are likely coming from other supportive presences in the astral plane, what you might call spirit guides. The next type of dream I will call the emotional dreams. These can overlay with the symbolic dreams, and they just could perhaps take on a new layer where you are literally feeling the emotion moving through your body. It is possible to have a dream, and it's not just in your mind. You're literally feeling some type of emotional energy moving through your body. It is possible to experience emotional healing, emotional release from something that may not have been fully processed. I myself have had an experience that was very visceral, very emotionally visceral, where I literally felt emotional sadness of the fact that I had caused someone some minor pain in an intimate relationship years in the past, and it showed up in a dream years later. And it was basically showing that to me, like, hey, you could have handled this a little bit better, and you had also repressed the emotion surrounding that. And for whatever reason, it took years for me to have the bandwidth to finally allow that to move through my field. And that came through in a dream. So dreams can be an emotional release pathway. Next, I will address what I will call lucid or even hyper-real dreams. Lucid dreams generally just mean being aware. There is the concept of lucid dreaming as type of a thing that someone can learn to do, essentially trying to take control of one's authority in the dream realm. Typically when we're dreaming, it seems like we don't really have much control. They're kind of happening to us, or we're just observing. But there is the notion that one can learn how to take charge and control and autonomy in a dream and do whatever they want. Some do try to do this, and perhaps it could be a liberating or fun experience, but from my perspective, it's probably not the best thing to do. As I've been mentioning here, these dreams are essentially being orchestrated for us in many ways, and they have certain purposes. They're not just random experiences to go have a joyride. So if you are kind of hijacking your dream experiences, you may be removing some of the benefits that are being offered up to you, rather than trying to alter the experience, because in their unaltered state, they're generally being presented for you in the way that is meant for you. On top of that, there are also dreams that have what feel like an extra layer of realness, to where it can imply almost something else entirely. It may feel like you are in a complete alternate dimension of reality. Even though I've already mentioned that generally our dreams are in another dimension of reality, there are certain types of dreams that can have a completely different felt sense, that it feels like something else completely different altogether. These can often be direct glimpses of the astral realm and the active happenings of what is transpiring there. You may be given a clear view of what's happening there, and it just is coming to you in what feels like a dream, but it's actually a direct glimpse. For example, you may be meeting certain people, you may be having certain encounters that feel so real. These could be direct meetups of your astral self with someone else's astral self. You may also be experiencing direct messages from divine sources, from other energies and beings that exist in this plane. I myself have had many dreams also of seeing myself moving around my own bedroom or my own home while I was sleeping. Like I could almost see my body. I was in my actual bedroom, like all the physical belongings were there. That almost makes no sense because generally our dreams are, like I was saying, they often take these types of narrative symbolic arcs. You're not in your immediate normal environment. So to me, that was a sign like I'm having a direct astral experience. So if you find yourself in your home and it being very vivid and real, and it's literally looking like an actual lived in place, you could be having a direct astral experience. Next, I will go over what could be called prophetic dreams or even visions. Dreams that end up foreshadowing events that actually play out in your life. Have you ever had that happen to you where you've dreamt of something and then at some point later in the future, it literally played out? Why does this happen? As I mentioned, you are tapping into the astral realm where timeline potentials exist. So it is very possible that you are receiving timeline glimpses or what could be called visions of the future. This can be a little bit enticing, attractive, seductive, because it might appear that if you have something like that play out, that if you have it happen again, that it's always going to happen. But in general, these are possibilities. They are not guarantees. Sometimes they are preparations from your guidance team for something that will very much likely play out. For example, I've had multiple times in my life where I've had windows of time where I received multiple dreams that were actively preparing me for what I could tell would be the next phase of my life. Basically preparing me to move locations. And I was getting inklings of certain details of how it will play out. And then just a couple months later, it literally played out exactly as that. So these were what you could call prophetic dreams. And then also, many people have mentioned that they have had visions in their dreams of major world events that did happen months or years later. So these do happen. But again, it would be beneficial to have discernment, because sometimes dreams that look like visions don't end up coming to fruition, but some do. Some manifest really rapidly, perhaps just a month or two later, whereas some might take years to manifest, and then some never happen. So these are opportunities to train your discernment of what is coming through. And also the fact that people may just be tuning into possibilities, that sometimes bringing them forward is still beneficial, either for that person or for the collective. Some people might get a vision of maybe a negative outcome. They feel like they need to share it with the public. Just by bringing that forward allows people to choose a different path. So the astral realm is showing possible timelines. These dream experiences are showing possible timelines, and what you do with them is up to you. Next, I will talk about, unfortunately, a very common experience in the dream world, which is what we would call nightmares. I'm sure all of us have had something that we could call a nightmare. These would be things like violent dreams, maybe dreaming of things that you might call monsters or zombies, very violent war, things that are just generally very scary. So what are these about? These can be, again, your own processing if you do have intense distortion in your field that is in need of clearing. I've had literal messages come through to me in my own dreams, one time literally telling me that due to me crossing a major life threshold, that I still had remnant stresses that were built up in my system. They were built up to a point that the only way to get them out was to purge them out through violent dreams. So I have experienced that many times in my life. When I had my external life was experiencing a lot of intensity, my dreams tend to mirror that. There was a lot of chaos in my dreams as well that could sometimes appear to be nightmares. So dreams can be an avenue for purging. But they can be also related to external experiences, things like collective terrors. You may be picking up on things that are not yours in the dream realm. As I mentioned, we are tapping into the astral plane, which includes everything in our shared collective field. So this could play out when you're having dreams that typically make no sense to your personal life. That could be an indicator that you're dreaming something scary, or that could be considered a nightmare that isn't actually yours or related to what you are experiencing in your day-to-day life. It wasn't really meant for you for like a learning experience or a discharge. You could be tuning into something that is happening in the collective. There also is the possibility, as I mentioned, there are non-physical energies, or what you might call entities, that exist on the astral plane in the realm that we go to experience dreams. It is possible to experience what you might call interference from some of these energies. And it is because you are generally in a pretty vulnerable state when you're sleeping. And generally you have your motor function is completely stopped. You're just kind of sitting there quite vulnerable. You generally don't have control over your physical body while you're asleep. While these energies, these entities technically can't physically harm you because they are non-physical. But they may just try to scare you. They have their own agendas, their own prerogatives. And for whatever reason, they may attempt to engage with you in ways that might feel scary. One of them is to create a dream for you that is quite scary. It is an opportunity for you to train your discernment as well as to strengthen your boundaries into what you are opening yourself up to. Now, how can you discern between these two experiences, whether it is your own processing of density, chaos, versus picking up on something that is in the collective? Generally speaking, it would make sense to look at your life and the narrative of the dream. Does it match your life? Like, especially is it repeating? Are you having the same nightmare over and over again? That could be a possibility that it is trying to get your attention and actually trying to help you. Like, there's something here that you really need to look at, versus just being actively, like, purely terrifying, maybe even haunting, maybe even genuinely disturbing. Or you might actually see something that looks like a monster, something that might haunt you and stay with you long after the fact. That is where it is leaning more in the direction that it could be something that would be considered interference, or something that is just not yours, and you're picking up on something that is in the collective fear. We as humanity do have a lot of collective fear and trauma that can get discharged into the astral layer, into the astral realm, and you can pick up on it in the dream realm. Now I will mention things that can also happen tangentially while you're dreaming, other experiences that can happen. It is common to experience interesting body sensations while you are having some of these dreams. So I just felt like it would be appropriate to call some of these out in case you are experiencing some of these, especially if some of your dreams are intense. They may coincide with certain body sensations. For example, you may experience body vibrations. Your body might be vibrating sometimes while you're sleeping, certain intense shakings even. These could be equivalent to things like receiving energetic upgrades, some type of expansion of your consciousness that requires a type of a jolting, energetic, vibrating type of experience. Or more commonly, these could be coinciding with the discharge in your dream. You could be discharging through your physical body. There is also the possibility, and this is another common experience, of having sleep paralysis, where you are kind of in that in-between space where you're like half awake, half asleep. You're aware that you're kind of awake, but your body is completely paralyzed. That is what is commonly referred to as sleep paralysis. This could be one of those types of astral interference experiences, but again is somewhat common, if not very enjoyable. And again, is a result of being in a state that is accessible for these types of things. So I've had many experiences of the sort. Some of them have been positive, some of them not so much. For example, I've had an experience once where I was in a dream and I literally felt like I had a Kundalini activation from the base of my spine, energy shooting up all the way up to my crown. Felt like I was just getting some type of energetic upgrade. I've had experiences where it felt like an energetic arm was like reaching over me and like jolting me with energy. So there are times where some of these other forces are trying to actually support us by giving us robust energetic attunements, because our waking consciousness can allow them to meet us. We don't have our defenses up. And unfortunately, I've also had sleep paralysis, which has not been fun. I've also had other experiences where I could sense that these were energetic presences, things in the astral realm that were trying to get my attention, and I learned only after the fact that these were my own shadow aspects that do exist in the astral realm, were returning to try to get my attention and try to reintegrate back into me. That is something that I've had happen to me while I was sleeping. I've also experienced major shakings, vibrations, generally as a result of some of these discharges that would show up in my dream space. My body would then respond in the same manner. Lastly, I will speak to some other things that some people are opening up to these days, just in case you or someone you know may be having one of these experiences and that they're not completely out of the ordinary. For example, if you have ever had a dream that felt like you were engaging in what looked like psychic powers, telekinetic abilities, more than just being like a cartoonish superhero that was one of these kind of narrative dreams, but it felt like it was almost somewhat real. It still felt like kind of bound by some type of physics. Like it really felt like you were doing something. This is a possibility, again, for you seeing yourself in the astral realm and what you are doing in this other realm, where we have more leeway in what can be done with the laws of physics. Things like engaging in astral, what could be even called combat or training. There are other things in that astral plane that are not so positive, and sometimes we're out there taking the trash out of some of these less supportive energies, and you may be seeing what you're actually doing in that realm. Perhaps you may have seen either yourself or just in general energy, yourself engaging with energetic patterns, grids, while you are dreaming. Perhaps you are going to certain places in the world, on Earth, to perhaps engage energetically. You may even be seeing energetic grids, ley lines, while you are dreaming. This could be, again, another thing that you are engaging in the astral plane, which is what could be called grid work, engaging in energetic work on another plane. Perhaps you have had dreams or experiences while you were sleeping where you may have seen beings or entities that looked like aliens or extraterrestrials, some type of non-human intelligence. This could actually be you receiving some form of contact with these beings in another dimension, in other planes of consciousness. Perhaps you may have seen yourself sitting at what looked like a council meeting, or perhaps inside of a spaceship, or just seeing spaceships in general. If you had dreams of spaceships, especially multiple dreams of them, it is very likely that you are starting to connect with beings on other planes of consciousness. These beings who have spaceships, they're in a higher plane of reality, and this is a potential that you are engaging with some of these beings, and you are perhaps being approached in a way to contact with them. So these are the types of things that generally happen for those who are ready and do slowly potentially ramp up over time. So if you're in an early phase where one of these things is starting to happen, it could be happening for a reason, and to gently prepare you for something else that might be waiting for you. So if you find yourself having any of these experiences, you are not crazy, and they could just be preparing you for something greater. And now that I've gone over quite a few experiences that one may be happening while they're sleeping, while they're dreaming, I will hint at another common experience, which is finding yourself having a full night of sleep and yet often still waking up tired. Perhaps after all that I mentioned here, that might not be such a surprise anymore. It could be because of some of the things that I mentioned here. Can you see why one might still wake up tired when you realize what we can all be opened up to and have access to while we are sleeping? Generally speaking, we are often engaged in rigorous and perhaps intense activities in this other realm, and that does translate into our physical body and our waking state. Essentially, every night, our astral bodies leave our physical body to go do other things, and then they return upon our waking. Essentially, what happens every day, every morning when we wake up, there does take time for our astral body to reintegrate back into our physical body. This can take many hours, depending on how robust of an experience our astral bodies were having the night prior. Or, on the flip side, it could happen the inverse. It could happen very rapidly, and it could be some type of disorienting experience, where you might wake up amped and really stressed for not really sure why. It could be the opposite experience. So sometimes people often feel groggy or heavy in the morning, and this is a time where people oftentimes are reaching for caffeine. What would be better is to support grounding that energy back into your body, helping your astral self settle into your body. So things like doing things that will help you ground, such as eating solid food in particular. I myself recognize that if I go too long without eating, or in particular eating solid food, I can get a little some headaches, head pressure. I realize I get kind of flighty. I haven't fully settled into my body. So sometimes just having a solid breakfast, some solid food of some kind, can help that grounding process. As well as time in nature, putting your feet on the grass, hands on a tree type of thing, that can help your body ground itself, to help your body integrate after perhaps a very lengthy night of traveling in the astral realm. And perhaps some people have said that they actively try to call some of their energy back in. So if that is something that you feel called to do, it may be supportive. And if you find yourself in the opposite situation where you're waking up feeling amped, you may have just had a really rapid descent of your astral self into your physical body. You may want to do the opposite. You may want to do things like meditation and calm yourself with some breath work and such to slow yourself and help integrate into a more gentle return to your waking life. So, in closing, I hope this provided some clarity on what some of your sleep and dream experiences are, and that nothing you're experiencing is truly inexplicable. Again, if you're wanting to open yourself up more to any of these more positive, informative experiences and dreams, you may put your intentions in that direction. Essentially, again, taking action, doing things like carrying a dream journal, taking notes, voice notes, written notes of what you're dreaming about, taking some time to actually reflect on what's coming through and how it might be revealing things about your life, and then even better, acting on what is being revealed to you. This is showing that you are being a good steward of what you are being given, and you will likely receive more. And on top of that, it's also honoring yourself. It's honoring what is in your subconscious, and it's honoring all that may be supporting you in unseen realms. So you're welcome to leave a comment if you've had any interesting dream or sleep experiences yourself. I would love to hear about them. If you find yourself struggling to understand your own dreams, you're having challenging sleep experiences that you're unsure how to make sense of, or simply wish to expand deeper into these other realms, I do offer one-on-one support in these exact areas. I have experienced everything I've mentioned here many times and to their absolute fullest intensity, and I would be happy to meet you in whatever you're navigating. I welcome you to check out my website link in the description and to reach out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.